Blessings, namaste, and love, everyone. I am Spiritualist, Psychic, Astrologer, and Medium Sette. As always, thank you for offering me this opportunity to share with you my astrological and spiritual insights. And in this video, we are looking to March of 2025. Now, March, we are in our eclipse season. We have a lunar eclipse and we have a solar eclipse, as well as a couple of planets moving retrograde, changing signs. March is going to be a very intense month. And as always, when we understand how to work with the energies, we empower ourselves to counteract any of the potential negative effects of any influence. Remember, it's all dependent upon how we embrace the energy. When we understand how to go with the flow of specific planets, signs, and alignments, we empower ourselves to counteract any possible adverse side effects. Remember, we have a free will. The planets and the signs and the universe has no power over us. We have this free will. It's universal law that nothing can override our free will if we don't allow it. And it's also regarding astrology. Astrology is a tool, and we look at all of this so to understand how to bring forth the blessings of anything that is presented to us. Even if something so beneficial comes along in terms of an alignment, it may not necessarily come to form if we are not working with the energy. So even whenever I highlight or touch upon or talk about anything that might seem adverse, I will always offer my suggestions as to how to counteract any potential negative side effect. Remember, whenever we look ahead, nothing's absolute, nothing's guaranteed, nothing's written in stone. We are defining and creating and co-creating all that we encounter moment by moment by moment. Now, that being said, on March 1st, Venus will move retrograde. Venus changes direction about every 18 months, and it remains retrograde for about 40 days. Now, Venus being the element, the planet of beauty, creativity, art, music, and with Venus going retrograde, Venus is going retrograde in the sign of Aries. And what I would like to emphasize with that is I've always talked about how every one of us has a creative potential. As a spiritual being, our essence is creativity. We're not always aware of that. You know, over the years, I found that many times when I speak with clients regarding creativity, they say, well, I'm not artistic, I'm not really musically inclined. And to that effect, I will always inspire us to recognize creativity is multifaceted. It's not specific to art and music. It's allowing us to recognize our imagination, the ideas that come to us, and bringing forth those inspiration. That's in a very rudimentary explanation, the creative process. So Venus moving retrograde, we have the opportunity to remember how we are creative beings, and that every one of us has a unique, specific creative potential. So my suggestion during this Venus retrograde, allow yourself to reflect, because whenever an element is retrograde, we reflect, we go back, we go within, we don't necessarily move forward. So specifically with Venus retrograde, we are reflecting on our creative potential, that as a spiritual being who is embodying human form, we have that possibility, though, that power to create, to bring forth our ideas. So this Venus retrograde, remember that we are creative beings. As I said, Venus moves retrograde on March 1st, and it will remain so for about 40 days. It will move direct on April 13th. So my suggestion, as always, reflect on your own personal potential of being a creative being. And then once Venus moves direct, as well as Mercury moving direct. So I'm going to touch upon that next. Allow yourself to move forward with whatever you have been inspired to recognize regarding your own personal creative potential. Now, Mercury will be moving retrograde on March 15th. It will also be in the sign of Aries as well. It moves retrograde on March 15th. It remains so until April 7th. That's the day when it changes direction from retrograde to moving forward. And as I'm always emphasizing, to remember that not until Mercury moves past the point at which it moved retrograde are we completely out of the retrograde influences, and that will be on April 26th. March 15th, it moves retrograde. April 7th, it moves direct, and then April 26th, we are completely out of the retrograde period. That's when Mercury returns to its full throttle speed. Now, being in the sign of Aries, one of the challenges of Aries is to move forward, to complete whatever it is that we began. Aries, sometimes the challenge with Aries is that the Aries element doesn't necessarily complete whatever it initiates. So especially during this Mercury retrograde, just reflect on anything in your lives which may need to be completed, which isn't done, which may be half done. This is the opportunity to reflect on all of that and to even move forward. Now, just because Mercury is retrograde doesn't mean that we are not able to move forward with certain things. Look at this, for example. Say there's a project around your home that's just been lingering. It's not completed. You began it, it hasn't been completed. This Mercury retrograde would be the opportunity to complete it because we're reflecting back on something that was already in motion. So you see how we work with the Mercury retrograde energies. So just look around and reflect on all the facets in your lives. Is there anything that is just kind of like hanging undone, that isn't complete? Allow yourself to reflect on that, and during the Mercury retrograde, move forward and complete whatever projects may need to be finalized that are just kind of perhaps lingering, hanging in limbo. The Aries element, it's also the one that represents really the entrepreneur. So if perhaps you want to move forward or begin any personal entrepreneurial matter, this is the opportunity to reflect on that, to reflect on whatever element that might be. Allow Spirit to guide you as to whatever may be necessary on your part to move forward, specifically with that entrepreneurial matter in whatever form that might be. Now, as I said, we are in our eclipse season. We're always being offered the opportunity with eclipses specifically to about 3 months before the event. So the December timeframe, that was the trigger point for these eclipse energies. Just reflect on these last 3 months. What has been shifting? What has been changing for you? And prepare to move forward with all of that. The last eclipse season we had was in the fall time frame, so also recognize what was shifting and changing for you at that time, and allow yourself to really prepare to move forward with whatever was going on back then, and also allow yourself to recognize what is coming to form that has been in motion for quite a long period of time. The lunar eclipse we have on March 14th. Remember, a lunar eclipse is a full moon. A full moon will always bring to form, culminate whatever energies have been in motion. The lunar eclipse will culminate whatever energies have been in motion for a long period of time. So again, reflect on what you're feeling is coming together for you. The full moon, it's also very much an intensified period of release. So that which may be coming to an end, that has been in motion for quite a while, and that finalization process will culminate at a lunar eclipse. Remember, the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse, they are intensified, powerful, concentrated full moons and new moons, and they contend with longer periods, longer cycles of experience. A regular new moon and full moon pretty much is just concentrated to that 27, 28 day lunar cycle. With the eclipses, they indicate turning points, and they concentrate their energies on what, or their influences on what has been in motion energetically for a long period of time. Sometimes a few months, sometimes 6 months, sometimes even years. It's all dependent upon how specific the alignments are to our astrological charts. Now, the lunar eclipse on March 14th, it's in the sign of Virgo. Virgo, among many things, represents our service to humanity and the understanding of what we can do for one another regarding that service. Many in these last few years have been inspired to recognize their own personal contributions to humanity. And as I'm always saying, there's no wrong or right to whatever this might be. It's really dependent upon the intention that defines all of that. And if you're finding yourself just wanting to be of service in any sort of way, let yourself recognize what that might be, especially at this eclipse season, and move forward with all of that. Virgo, among many things, represents health and wellness, personally as well as mundane. So perhaps also see this lunar eclipse as an opportunity to take control of your own personal wellness in whatever form that might be. There's no wrong or right to all of this. It's what serves a greater purpose for us. Virgo, it's an earth sign. So working with the elements of the earth, anything that is natural and organic, is very much in alignment with our physical form. So perhaps explore those natural and sometimes what we refer to as alternative modalities as to what you may employ for yourself on a personal level in whatever form resonates with you. Remember, there is no wrong or right. We share these suggestions to inspire you to just explore these alternative possibilities as to one of the many reasons as to why we look at things astrologically, to see the alternative, to look to the metaphysical, look beyond what might not necessarily be obvious, and explore unconventional modalities. Remember, whenever we have the opportunity, or rather whenever we allow ourselves to really think outside the box, that's when we tap into our own personal genius in whatever form that might be. I remember in my early days of exploring metaphysics, I was shared the knowing that every one of us has a genius potential. We're not always taught to recognize that. And one highly effective manner and tool which allows us to tap into that genius thinking is meditation. When we go within, when we quiet the mind, and we remove ourselves from the cacophony of the outside world, that's when we tap into these genius levels of thinking. Genius thinking is the ability to think abstractly, outside the box, receive alternative solutions to any situation which may seem or which may need to be resolved. That's, in a very simple way, genius level thinking, tapping into extraordinary, unusual, unconventional levels of alternate possibilities. And then we begin to really see the bigger picture. We see beyond the physical. We look to the metaphysical, because remember, spirit can see the bigger picture. Sometimes we can only see like a small fragment, especially when it comes to solutions to certain situations. But spirit sees the bigger picture, and spirit is very willing to share with us its grand perspective. Our our vision sometimes with our human hindered eyes can be very limited. And spirits, because it's not confined to the physical form, can see the bigger picture, and as always is very willing to share that with us. And when we quiet the mind and go within through tools and modalities such as meditation, that's where we are at those same vibrational frequencies as the spirit realm. Just something a little more specific is that the brainwave frequency during meditation, we are at what's known as the alpha brainwave frequency, which is about 10 cycles per second. That is the same vibrational frequency as the spirit realm. So in meditation, we are in alignment with the frequencies of the spirit realm, and we tap into that alternative genius level thinking. Virgo, because it is ruled by Mercury, when the energy is not anchored and grounded, it can be very imbalanced, erratic. Sometimes, especially the dynamic of the mind can run amok, and to an extreme, a form of, sometimes a bit of a psychosis is demonstrated. And again, that's not the negative, is when we are not anchored and grounded and working with the energy. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So certainly at the time of the lunar eclipse, is actually the day before Mercury goes retrograde, we need to allow ourselves to be acutely aware of how the dynamic of the mind, if it's not grounded, will run amok and be very imbalanced, unbalanced, and erratic, especially with thoughts and the thinking and behaviors. And we need to be very aware of that, of what might be demonstrated in the outside world regarding those imbalances. And as always, with awareness, regardless of what is occurring in the outside world, we can empower ourselves to stay energetically peaceful and grounded. We just have to understand what's required on our part to be in the world and not of it. There's, a Buddhist philosophy that says peacefulness doesn't mean that the outside world is peaceful. That true essence of peacefulness is when there is chaos in the outside world. However, when we are peaceful within ourselves, that's true, real peacefulness. When we can just detach ourselves from the imbalances of the outside world and remain peaceful and grounded. That's also the opportunity to tap into our power as well as the potential of our creative being. So as we're progressing through this eclipse season, especially with the lunar eclipse being in one of the signs that can represent a psychosis, especially in the outside world, the other sign being Gemini, and because it's ruled by Mercury. But when that Mercury element is anchored and grounded, we counteract any potential negative side effect. And I cannot emphasize the importance of that enough. The shamans understand the psychosis which exists in the outside world as what they refer to as the Wetiko virus, and I've shared my understanding through my writings and on other platforms regarding all of this. But there's some wonderful information for those whom this topic resonates with. And there's an author, his name is Paul Levi. He has several books on this subject, so I would inspire all. As always, don't take my word for any of this. I'm here to plant seeds of inspiration and encourage you to explore and do the homework and embrace whatever resonates with you. As always, to know your power and to tap into your own personal creative power of the creative spiritual being that you really are. Now, on March 20th, the sun moves into the sign of Aries, and that will take place on March 20th at 5:01 and 26 seconds a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Don't forget, it's March in the early morning hours of March 9th. We advance to daylight a savings time. So we are on daylight or Eastern Daylight Time now. That's 5:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time when the sun transits in the sign of Aries. And whenever the sun transits a specific sign, it energizes the elements of that sign. I referred earlier as Aries being the sign of the entrepreneur, the initiator, and the challenge with that is to follow through with whatever it is that we need to complete. So as the sun transits Aries, it's another opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, with Mercury being in Aries, to follow through with whatever might be in limbo that's going on in your lives. And also, Aries is ruled by Mars, which is the planet of energy. Certainly, as the sun moves into the sign of Aries in the northern hemisphere, it's the spring time frame. We begin a new season. Aries begins the cycle of experience of the tropical zodiac. It's a time to move forward, initiate, and to just really allow ourselves to become reinvigorated with that energy of Mars as well as the sun. I also have spoken for many years how the winter time frame, it is the more auspicious opportunity to do what we call spring cleaning, so that when we begin the spring, we begin this new season where everything I was going to say when everything comes back to life, but it never really died, where everything is reinvigorated and it's rejuvenated. So certainly before March 20th, if you have that last minute spring cleaning to do in the house, clear out the closets, clean out any lingering energy that may be just kind of hovering around especially in your homes as well as in yourself, and just begin the spring time frame with a clean slate. Now, we have our solar eclipse, which is an intensified concentrated new moon on March 29th. And as always, we have before the new moon, we have the balsamic phase, which is a few days before the new moon, which gives us the opportunity to prepare for the new lunar cycle. The balsamic phase begins on March 25th at 11:49 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That is the auspicious opportunity to energetically clear and prepare for the coming lunar cycle. Now, with a solar eclipse, the 3-month time frame before that event is the even greater opportunity to prepare for whatever we plant and cast in motion at the time of the solar eclipse. So allow yourself to reflect on these last few months, what you feel is being completed, what you feel is coming to an end, and allow yourself to move forward with that completion process. Because also, we have our solar eclipse in the sign of Aries. It's at 9 degrees of Aries, so that Aries element is very much intensified and concentrated in terms of moving forward. We can, in these next 6 months, observe many things catapulting and moving forward towards many blessings, and that's what I would like to emphasize upon. The moving towards the many blessings of our birthright. So much has kept all of those wonderful things away from us, and the way that the energy is shifting is so that every one of us can embrace and enjoy the blessings of our birthright. Certainly we may feel as though time is accelerated in these next few months. That being said, the understanding of remaining anchored and grounded is even more important right now, so that we're not motion sick because of how quickly everything might be accelerating. Sometimes we feel very out of sorts, very disoriented. That could be an indication of how sensitive we are to these energetic shifts. And remember, we can always counteract all of that. We just have to be aware and understand how to work with the energy. One final point I'd like to touch upon is that Neptune, and I've touched upon this before, Neptune has been in the late degrees of Pisces. On March 30th, it will be moving into Aries. Now, Pisces will not be fully in Aries until I believe it's the early part of 2026. It will move into Aries on March 30th. It will move retrograde in July, and then it will return to Pisces on about October 23rd. Now, Neptune in the late degrees of Pisces, Neptune is the planetary ruler of Pisces. That is such an intensified clearing, cleansing, and purging of that which exists in the subconscious and releasing all of that discord, especially fear. So many don't always recognize how much fear defines what it is that we are experiencing in our lives. You know, when we're tapping into, or rather when we have the courage to really go within and what some refer to as shadow work, and look to see the discord that is existing within the deep subconscious of ourselves and correct it from that perspective, the external experiences are so much more in alignment with what it is that we truly desire to enjoy while we are in this human physical form. You know, as I've been saying for many, many years, every one of us really has been designed to enjoy many blessings while we are in this human form. You know, we're not always taught to recognize that. So much of that is kept from us for whatever reason that might be. But also remember, we have a free will. We have the ability to really tap into, as I said earlier, that creative potential and bring forth all that it is that we desire. But that fear, which always interferes with our joys and wellness, and that's another video that I've been sharing recently that's on my YouTube page that I've entitled The Fear That Interferes, and really understanding how those low vibrational frequencies don't always allow us to really enjoy the blessings of our birthright. This Neptune in Pisces experience. Now, Neptune requires, I forgot exactly how much time, but it's quite a bit of time. It's 100 some odd years that it takes to go through the entire zodiac. So this Neptune in Pisces experience, it's also a very deep, intense clearing of the discord which exists in the subconscious of the outside world. And a lot of that is connected with emotions, because Pisces and Neptune, they're connected with the water element. Water represents, metaphysically, water represents the emotions. You know, many are feeling overly emotional during these times as well. But remember, that's a clearing. That's a releasing. You know, and just again, recognize what you feel is best for you. But we may feel, especially with Neptune in the very last stages of Pisces, because that last stage, that 28, 29 degree, that's a critical degree. All of that emotional release could certainly be very intensified, you know, and not everyone is aware of the importance of remaining grounded during these times. So certainly demonstrations in the outside world may again seem a little erratic and imbalanced. It doesn't mean that any of that needs to have a negative effect on our wellness and our well-being. Once again, I'm spiritualist, psychic astrologer, and medium Ray Sette. As always, thank you for this opportunity to share with you some of my spiritual and astrological insights. Remember, sometimes we barely scratch the surface in these videos on these topics, which sometimes do require grander platforms. So it is my intention and desire to inspire you, as always, to know the power of your being, offer some thought-provoking insights, and encourage you to explore and discover your own personal higher truth. Live by that truth, welcome the blessings of your birthright, and share those blessings with many. Keep yourself in a good place, remain in the light, and forever in a place of love. Many blessings. Namaste.